The camera clicked, and I watched from across the room as my mother-in-law, Patricia, arranged everyone for what felt like the 100th family photo that evening. Her voice carried that sugary sweetness she reserved for public moments, directing cousins and aunts and uncles into perfect positions around the mahogany dining table where her famous apple pie sat untouched, waiting for its Instagram debut. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Move in closer, everyone. Sarah, you stand right behind your father. Michael, put your arm around your sister. Perfect. She stepped back, surveying her masterpiece like a director on a movie set. This is going to be beautiful for the family album. I stood there holding my wine glass, wearing the navy dress I'd spent an hour picking out because I wanted to look perfect for David's family reunion. I wanted to belong. I wanted to matter. But as Patricia raised her phone for the third angle of the same shot, I realized something that made my stomach drop to the floor. She wasn't calling my name, not once, not for any of the photos. I'd been standing there for 20 minutes watching her orchestrate picture after picture, and somehow, every single time, I was invisible to her. "One more," Patricia announced, clapping her hands together. "This lighting is just gorgeous." She gestured for everyone to gather closer, her silver bracelet catching the chandelier light as she waved people into position. "David, sweetie, stand next to your cousin Jenny. Perfect family shot." That's when it hit me. David was in the photo. His sister Sarah was there. His father William stood proudly in the center. Even David's teenage nephew Marcus, who'd spent the entire evening glued to his phone, had been specifically called over and positioned in the frame. But not me. Never me. I felt heat creeping up my neck, that familiar burn of embarrassment mixed with something deeper, something that tasted like rejection. We'd been married for 3 years. 3 years of Christmas mornings and birthday dinners, and anniversary celebrations where I'd smiled and laughed and tried so hard to earn my place in this family. 3 years of carefully chosen gifts and remembered birthdays and genuine interest in their lives. And yet here I stood, watching them, create memories that would live in frames on mantles and in photo albums, memories where I simply didn't exist. The worst part wasn't even the exclusion itself. It was the casual way it happened, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Patricia didn't look uncomfortable or conflicted. She didn't glance my way with apologetic eyes or seem to wrestle with some difficult decision. She was completely at ease with writing me out of their family story, one photo at a time. "Beautiful!" she exclaimed as the camera clicked again. "Absolutely beautiful. This one's definitely going on the Christmas cards." I tried to tell myself it was an oversight, that Patricia was just caught up in the moment, focused on getting the perfect shot, and somehow genuinely forgot to include me. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't the first time. Last Thanksgiving, she'd gathered everyone for a photo by the fireplace while I was in the kitchen helping with dishes. When I emerged with the gravy boat, wiping my hands on a towel, the photo session was over and everyone was already sitting down to eat. "Oh, honey, we just took the most lovely family picture," she'd said with that same bright smile. "Maybe next time." At Easter, I'd been in the bathroom when she decided to capture a spontaneous moment of everyone hunting for eggs in the backyard with David's nieces. "You just missed it, dear," she told me when I came outside. "The lighting was perfect, but you know how quickly these moments pass." And at David's birthday dinner 2 months ago, she'd somehow managed to take 17 different photos of the cake presentation without a single one including me, despite the fact that I was sitting right next to the birthday boy, the woman, who'd spent all afternoon making his favorite lemon cake from scratch, because I knew how much it meant to him. Each time, I'd pushed down the hurt. Each time, I'd found a way to rationalize it or excuse it or blame myself for not being in the right place at the right time. But standing there in that dining room, Watching my husband smile naturally for yet another family portrait that would forever exclude his wife, I couldn't pretend anymore. This wasn't accidental. This was intentional. Patricia finished taking her photos and immediately began scrolling through them, showing different family members the results. "Oh, this one is gorgeous," she cooed, tilting her phone toward David's. "Aunt Margaret. Look how handsome William looks here. And Sarah's smile is just radiant." I watched David lean over to look at the photos, nodding and commenting on how nice they turned out. He didn't seem to notice that I wasn't in them. Or if he did notice, he didn't seem to think it was worth mentioning. That realization stung worse than Patricia's deliberate exclusion. My own husband, the man who'd promised to love and honor, me, was looking at family photos that erased my existence and acting like everything was perfectly normal. I excused myself and walked toward the powder room, needing a moment to collect myself before I said something I might regret. The hallway was lined with framed photographs, a gallery of family memories spanning decades. David as a gap-toothed 7-year-old at Disney World, Sarah's high school graduation, William and Patricia's wedding portrait from 1987, birthday parties, and holidays and vacations and milestones, all preserved behind glass and hung with careful precision. I studied them closely, looking for patterns I'd never noticed before. Photo after photo of family gatherings, celebrations, special occasions. Extended family members I'd met only once or twice were featured prominently in multiple pictures. Family friends who showed up occasionally were included in group shots and candid moments. But as I scanned frame after frame, a sick feeling settled in my stomach. There I was, occasionally, in the background of a few shots from before David and I got married. A blurry figure at the edge of a Christmas photo from when we were dating. Half of my face visible in a corner of someone's birthday celebration. But from our wedding forward, I started disappearing. Not completely, not all at once, but gradually, strategically. The photos that made it into frames were the ones where I'd stepped away for a moment, or where I was blocked by someone else, or where the composition just happened to cut me out. It was like watching myself being slowly erased from their family, history, one carefully curated moment at a time. I splashed cold water on my wrists and took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger that was building in my chest. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe I was reading too much into innocent coincidences. Maybe Patricia wasn't as calculating as my hurt feelings were making her seem. But then, I heard voices coming from the kitchen, and Patricia's words stopped me cold. "I just think some photos are more timeless when they're just blood family. You know?" she was saying to someone, probably her sister Linda, who'd driven down from Portland for the reunion. "Don't get me wrong, I like Rebecca well enough, but these are the pictures that will matter in 20 years. These are the ones that capture who we really are. Who we really are. After 3 years of marriage, 3 years of showing up and trying and caring and being present, I was still not part of who they really were. I gripped the edge of the bathroom sink, my knuckles white against the marble countertop. The woman talking in the kitchen wasn't some stranger making casual observations about photography composition. This was my mother-in-law, the woman who hugged me hello at every gathering and asked about my job and complimented my cooking and signed my birthday cards with, "Love, Mom Patricia." All of it, apparently, was performance. Surface-level politeness designed to keep the peace, while she systematically excluded me from anything that mattered, anything permanent, anything that would acknowledge my place in her son's life. The conversation in the kitchen continued, and I found myself frozen in place, listening to my own character assassination delivered in the same cheerful tone Patricia used to discuss weekend plans or her book club selections. "It's not that I don't appreciate her," she was explaining, and I could picture her arranging leftover appetizers as she spoke, her hands busy while her mouth delivered calculated cruelty. "She makes David happy, and that's what matters most. But family photos should be about legacy, about the people who share our blood and our history. Rebecca's sweet, but she's not really family in that deep, generational sense. Not really family. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of holidays, and birthdays and Sunday dinners. 3 years of being there when David's father had his heart attack, holding Patricia's hand in the hospital waiting room while she cried. 3 years of remembering everyone's favorites and showing up early to help set up and staying late too, help clean up. None of it made me family in any deep generational sense. I mean, marriages come and go, Patricia continued, and I heard the clink of plates being stacked. But this family, this core group of people, we're forever. These photos need to reflect that permanence. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Marriages come and go. I thought about our wedding day, when Patricia had stood up during the reception and given a speech about how happy she was to welcome me into the family, how she'd always wanted a daughter, and how blessed she felt that David had found someone who loved him so completely. I remembered crying during that speech, overwhelmed with gratitude and joy at being accepted so warmly. Now I understood that it had all been theater, a performance for the wedding guests. Words that sounded good in the moment but held no real meaning or commitment behind them. The bathroom door felt heavy as I finally opened it and stepped back into the hallway. The party continued around me, voices and laughter floating from the living room where someone had started a card game. The normalcy of it all felt surreal, like I was watching life happen from behind glass. David appeared at my elbow, smiling and loose from 2 glasses of wine. "There you are. Mom wants to get one more group shot before people start leaving. She says the lighting in the living room is perfect right now." I looked at him, this man I'd married and built a life with, and wondered how he could be so oblivious to what had been happening all evening. Did he genuinely not notice that I'd been excluded from every single photo? Or did he notice and simply not care enough to say anything? "Another photo?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Yeah. She wants to get everyone by the piano. Apparently it's the same spot where they took a big family photo when she and Dad bought this house 30 years ago. Kind of a full circle moment, you know?" I nodded, following him toward the living room where Patricia was already arranging people again, her voice bright with excitement as she directed traffic. "This is going to be so special," she announced to the room. "The last photo we took in this exact spot was in 1994, right after we moved in. Sarah was just a baby, and David was missing his front teeth. Now look at this beautiful family we've grown into." She positioned William at the piano bench, then arranged David and Sarah on either side of him. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda flanked the group, with Cousin Jenny and her husband Mark forming a second row behind them. Even Marcus, still clutching his phone, was specifically called over and positioned in the front. I stood near the doorway, waiting. Surely this time, with everyone watching and the significance of the moment, she would include me. This was supposed to be about showing how the family had grown and changed over the decades. Wasn't my marriage to David part of that? Growth? Patricia stepped back, surveying the arrangement with a critical eye. She adjusted Sarah's position slightly, moved Jenny a half step to the left, and asked William to angle his shoulders toward the camera. "Perfect," she declared, raising her phone. "This is absolutely perfect. Everybody smile." The camera clicked, and I felt something inside me shatter. I was standing 10 feet away, clearly visible, obviously available to be included, and she'd arranged this supposedly significant family moment without even glancing in my direction. This wasn't about spacing or composition or lighting. This was about sending a message, loud and clear, about who belonged and who didn't. But what happened next changed everything. As Patricia began scrolling through the photos she'd just taken, showing them to various family members and getting the expected chorus of compliments, David's expression started to shift. I watched him look at the phone screen, then look around the room, his eyes finding me near the doorway. For the first time all evening, I saw recognition flicker across his face. Not just awareness that I was there, but understanding that I wasn't in the photo, that I hadn't been in any of the photos. He looked back at the phone screen, then at me again, and I saw something I'd been waiting 3 years to see. I saw him get angry. "Mom," he said, his voice cutting through the happy chatter around the piano. "Why isn't Rebecca in any of these pictures?" The room went quiet. Patricia looked up from her phone, blinking in surprise at the sudden shift in tone. "Oh, well, I suppose she could have joined us if she'd wanted to," she said with a light laugh, as if my exclusion had been my own choice. "I didn't want to pressure her. Some people don't like having their picture taken." David's jaw tightened. "She loves having her picture taken. And she's been standing right there watching you arrange everyone else for the past hour." I felt every eye in the room turn toward me, and heat flooded my cheeks. This was exactly what I'd been trying to avoid all evening, the confrontation. That would make me look petty, or demanding, or oversensitive. But David wasn't finished. "Actually, I need to ask everyone something," he said, his voice getting stronger. "Has anyone else noticed that Rebecca hasn't been included in a single family photo tonight? Because I just scrolled through Mom's phone, and somehow my wife of 3 years has been mysteriously absent from every single shot." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see family members glancing at each other, some looking genuinely surprised, others shifting uncomfortably like they'd noticed but hadn't wanted to say anything. Patricia's face had gone pale, but she maintained her bright smile. "David, honey, I think you're making this into something bigger than it needs to be. We can certainly take some photos with Rebecca now if she'd like." "If she'd like?" David's voice rose slightly. "Mom, she's my wife. She should have been included from the beginning, automatically, without having to ask for permission to exist in our family photos." I wanted to disappear into the floor. This was everything I'd been afraid of. The dramatic confrontation that would poison family relationships and make everyone uncomfortable. But at the same time, I felt a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in years. Someone was defending me. Someone was fighting for my place in this family. My husband was finally seeing what I'd been enduring in silence. David pulled out his own phone and held it up. "You know what? Let's take a real family photo. One that includes everyone who actually belongs in this family." He moved toward me, slipping his arm around my waist and pulling me close to his side. "Rebecca belongs in these pictures because she belongs in this family. She's not some temporary guest we're tolerating until something better comes along. She's my wife, and she's here to stay." The room was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Patricia stood frozen, her phone still in her hand, looking like she'd been slapped. But David wasn't done delivering his message. He looked directly at his mother, his voice clear and firm. "And since we're all here together, and since this seems like the perfect moment for family announcements, I have some news that should make Rebecca's place in this family crystal clear." My heart started pounding. I had no idea what he was about to say, but the intensity in his voice told me it was significant. David's hand found mine, his fingers intertwining with mine as he looked around the room at each family member in turn. "Rebecca and I are going to have a baby." The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Gasps and exclamations erupted from different corners, and I felt the energy shift dramatically. But I was focused entirely on Patricia's face, watching her expression cycle through shock, confusion, and something that looked almost like panic. "A baby?" Sarah squealed, abandoning her position by the piano to rush over and hug us both. "Oh my God, I'm going to be an aunt!" The room exploded into congratulations and questions and excitement, but I kept my eyes on Patricia. She stood perfectly still, her carefully composed facade finally cracking as the full implications of David's announcement sank in. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about her grandchild, her blood, her legacy, growing inside the woman she'd been systematically excluding from family photos. David's arm tightened around me as family members surrounded us with hugs and well wishes, but his eyes never left his mother's face. "So, you see, Mom," he said, his voice carrying clearly over the celebration. "When you take photos of this family, going forward, you'll be including the woman who's carrying your grandchild, the woman who's been part of this family for 3 years already, but who will now be connected to us in a way that even you can't erase from the family tree." Patricia's phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor. She stared at us, at me specifically, like she was seeing me for the first time, and in that moment I realized that everything was about to change. Not just because of the baby growing inside me, but because my husband had finally seen what I'd been living with, and he'd chosen to fight for me in front of everyone who mattered. The woman who'd spent years making me feel like an outsider, like a temporary addition to their family story, was suddenly faced with a reality she couldn't manipulate or exclude. I was carrying her legacy. I was going to be the mother of her grandchild, and there wasn't a single photo arrangement in the world that could edit that truth away. The silence that followed David's announcement stretched for what felt like hours, though it was probably only seconds. I watched Patricia's face cycle through emotions I'd never seen her display before. The polished composure she wore like armor was cracking, revealing something raw underneath. William was the first to break the spell, stepping forward with tears, in his eyes to embrace both David and me. "A grandchubby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Our first grandbaby." The genuine joy in his reaction made my throat tight. This was what family was supposed to feel like. But Patricia remained frozen in place, her hands trembling slightly as she bent to pick up her dropped phone. When she straightened, her eyes met mine across the room, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw something that looked like fear. The next few minutes were a blur of excitement and questions. When was I due? How long had we known? Was I feeling okay? Had we started thinking? About names? The family that had overlooked me all evening suddenly couldn't get enough of me, surrounding me with warmth and attention that felt both wonderful and bittersweet. Through it all, Patricia stayed on the periphery, not joining the celebration, but not leaving either. She watched everything with an expression I couldn't quite read, like she was trying to solve a puzzle that had suddenly become infinitely more complicated. It wasn't until later, when most of the family had gone home and David was helping his father load leftover food into containers, that Patricia finally approached me. I was sitting in the living room, exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the evening when she appeared beside the couch. "May I sit?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd heard it all night. I nodded, curious despite everything that had happened. She settled beside me, smoothing her skirt with nervous fingers. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. "Several apologies, actually." I waited, not trusting myself to speak yet. David was right. About the photos. About everything. She took a shaky breath. "I have been excluding you, and it wasn't accidental. It was deliberate and cruel, and I'm ashamed of myself." The admission hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to make it easy for her, to brush it off and move forward, but I'd spent too many years swallowing hurt to let this moment pass without honesty. "Why?" I asked simply. Patricia's hands twisted in her lap. "Because I was scared," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "When David brought you home, you were so young and vibrant and full of life. You made him laugh in ways I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. You brought out this side of him that I'd forgotten existed." She paused, staring at her hands. "And I was terrified that you would change him, that you would take him away from us, from this family, from the traditions we'd built. I thought if I didn't get too attached, if I kept some distance, it would hurt less when you inevitably left. But I never planned to leave," I said quietly. "I've been trying to earn my place here for 3 years." I know that now, she said, tears finally spilling over. I can see how much you love him, how much you love all of us, even when we didn't deserve it. You've shown up for every birthday, every holiday, every crisis. When William had his heart attack, you were the one holding my hand while David was parking the car. You've been more of a daughter to me than I've been a mother to you. The weight of her words settled over me. This wasn't the apology I'd expected, but it was the one I needed to hear. The photos, she continued, they were my way of maintaining control, of keeping you at arm's length while pretending everything was fine. I told myself I was protecting the family legacy, but really, I was just protecting myself from caring too much about someone I was convinced would leave. She turned to face me fully, her makeup smudged from crying. But you're not leaving, are you? You're here, and you're carrying my grandchild, and you're part of this family whether I was ready to accept it or not. I reached over and took her hand, surprising us both. I never wanted to take David away from you, I said. I wanted to add to what you'd built, not replace it. Patricia squeezed my fingers. I see that now. And I want to do better. I want to be the mother-in-law you deserve, and the grandmother this baby deserves. If you'll let me. Before I could respond, David appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with cautious optimism. Everything okay in here? Patricia stood up, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Actually, I think everything's going to be more than okay. She looked at me, then at David. I'd like to retake some of those photos if that's all right. All of them, with Rebecca front and center where she belongs. David's face broke into the first genuine smile I'd seen from him all evening. I think that sounds perfect. We spent the next hour recreating every photo from the evening, but this time I was included in all of them. Patricia made sure I was positioned prominently, often right in the center, and she took twice as many shots as before to make sure we got them perfect. But the real transformation wasn't in the photos themselves. It was in Patricia's behavior toward me. She asked about my morning sickness, wanted to know if we'd started looking at cribs, shared stories about her own pregnancies with David and Sarah. For the first time since I'd known her, she was treating me like family. As we prepared to leave that night, Patricia pulled me aside one more time. I'm going to frame one of tonight's photos for the mantle, she said. The one of you and David by the piano, with your hand on your belly. I want everyone who comes into this house to see it and know that you're the heart of this family now. Driving home, David reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have noticed what was happening sooner. I should have stood up for you years ago. I squeezed his fingers. You stood up for me when it mattered most. The baby announcement, he said with a small smile. I've been waiting for the right moment to share that news, but when I saw how she was treating you tonight, I realized there would never be a more perfect time. How long have you known? I asked. About the baby? Since yesterday when you left the pregnancy test on the bathroom counter. He grinned. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? I laughed, the first real laugh I'd had all evening. I was trying to figure out how to tell you. And about my mother's behavior? I've suspected for a while, but tonight made it impossible to ignore. I'm just sorry it took me so long to see what you were dealing with. 3 months later, I was sorting through a box of family photos Patricia had given me when I found something that made me stop cold. It was a picture from our wedding day, one I'd never seen before. In it, Patricia and I were embracing during the reception, both of us crying happy tears. On the back, in Patricia's careful handwriting, was a note. The day I gained a daughter, I was too scared to love. I won't make that mistake again. She'd kept that photo for 3 years, hidden away like a secret hope. Now it sits on my desk at work, a reminder that sometimes people's worst behavior comes from their deepest fears, and that redemption is possible even when it seems too late. The baby kicks as I write this, and I think about the family photos we'll take after she's born. Photos where she'll be surrounded by people who love her unconditionally, who will never make her question her place or her worth. Photos where everyone who matters is included, celebrated, and cherished. Patricia calls me every Sunday now to check on the pregnancy and share stories about David's childhood. She's started a photo album specifically for the baby, and she's asked me to help her choose which pictures to include. It's full of moments that matter, memories that reflect the truth of our family rather than some carefully curated version of it. Last week, she framed the pregnancy announcement photo from that night at the reunion and hung it in the hallway where everyone can see it. Under it, she placed a small plaque that reads, "The night our family grew." Not the night we found out about the baby, but the night our family truly became complete. Sometimes the moments that break us open are the same ones that show us who we really are and who we want to become. That night, standing in Patricia's living room watching my husband defend my place in his family, I learned that love sometimes requires courage, that truth can be painful but necessary, and that the best changes often come from the worst moments. My daughter will grow up knowing she belongs, knowing her worth, knowing that family isn't just about blood but about choice and commitment, and showing up for each other when it matters most. She'll see photos of herself surrounded by people who fought for her place in their hearts before she was even born. And maybe someday, when she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her about the night everything changed. About the grandmother who learned to love without fear. About the father who learned to stand up and fight. And about the mother who learned that sometimes you have to wait for people to choose you. But when they finally do, it's worth everything you endured while waiting. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.